In a small, peaceful town surrounded by rolling green hills and dense forests, life moved at a slow, steady pace. The air was always fresh, carrying the scent of wildflowers and pine trees. Nestled beside a winding river that sparkled under the sun, the town had an almost magical charm. Among its residents was a young girl named Clara, who was known for her kind heart and adventurous spirit. At just 16 years old, she already stood out in the community, not because she sought attention, but because of the way she cared for others without expecting anything in return. Clara loved spending her afternoons by the river. It was her favorite place to escape from the world, even if only for a little while. She would sit beneath an ancient oak tree whose branches stretched wide like welcoming arms, its gnarled roots twisted into the earth, creating natural seats, where Clara often perched with her sketchbook. The sound of the flowing water soothed her, and she found inspiration in the way sunlight danced on the ripples. Sometimes she'd toss smooth stones across the surface, watching them skip 3, 4, or even 5 times before disappearing beneath the waves. On this particular day, Clara had decided to bring her notebook along. She wanted to capture the beauty of the river in her sketches, hoping to turn it into something more than just lines on paper. As she sat cross-legged on the soft grass, pencil in hand, she began drawing the scene before her: the gentle curve of the riverbank, the swaying reeds, and the occasional bird dipping low to skim the water. Her concentration was absolute, her mind lost in the rhythm of the pencil scratching against the page. But then, something broke the calm. A distant splash echoed through the air, followed by muffled cries for help. Clara froze, her pencil hovering, mid-stroke. For a moment she wondered if she'd imagined it. After all, the river wasn't usually busy this time of day. Most people were either working in their fields or tending to chores at home. But when the shouts grew louder and more desperate, Clara knew she couldn't ignore them. Her heart pounded as she leaped to her feet, leaving her sketchbook behind. She ran toward the source of the commotion, her sneakers crunching against the gravel path that led closer to the water. When she reached the edge of the river, what she saw made her blood run cold. A man was thrashing in the middle of the current, his body being pulled downstream by the force of the water. He wore a cowboy hat that bobbed up and down as he struggled to stay afloat. His boots kicked wildly, but they did little to keep him above the surface. Without giving herself time to think, Clara acted. She didn't hesitate, didn't weigh the risks. It simply wasn't in her nature to stand by when someone needed help. Taking a deep breath, she plunged into the icy water. The shock of the cold hit her instantly, stealing her breath for a moment, but she quickly regained focus. Swimming had always come naturally to her, thanks to years of practice during summer, days spent at the river. Now those skills would prove invaluable. The current was stronger than usual, likely due to recent rains swelling the river. Clara fought against it with every ounce of strength she had, her arms slicing through the water as she pushed forward. Each stroke brought her closer to the struggling figure ahead. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as she battled the relentless pull of the river. But finally, she reached him. Grabbing hold of his arm, she steadied herself and began pulling him toward the shore. It wasn't easy. The man, clearly exhausted, was heavier than she expected, and the weight of his soaked clothing added to the challenge. But Clara refused to give up. Summoning every bit of determination within her, she managed to drag him onto solid ground. Both collapsed onto the bank, gasping for air. Water dripped from their clothes, pooling around them as they lay there catching their breath. As the adrenaline began to fade, Clara turned her attention to the stranger. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly from exertion. The man nodded weakly, still trying to recover. Slowly, he pushed himself into a sitting position and removed his hat, revealing a rugged face lined with age and experience. His eyes met hers, filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said hoarsely. "You saved my life." Clara shrugged modestly, brushing damp strands of hair away from her face. "I'm just glad I was here," she replied. Despite the seriousness of the situation, there was a warmth in her tone, a kindness that came effortlessly to her. The man introduced himself as Ethan, explaining that he'd been riding his horse near the river when the animal spooked and bolted, leaving him stranded. Unfamiliar with the terrain, he'd misjudged the depth of the water and fallen in. "I owe you everything," he added sincerely, looking at her with admiration. For Clara, however, this was just another day of doing what felt right. She offered him her jacket to ward off the chill, making sure he was comfortable before asking if there was anything else she could do. Little did she know this encounter was far from ordinary. What started as a simple act of bravery would soon lead to unexpected twists and revelations, setting the stage for a story neither of them could have anticipated. The riverbank was quiet once again, save for the sound of water dripping off Clara's clothes and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. Ethan sat hunched over, his cowboy hat resting on his knee as he tried to catch his breath. His face was pale, but there was a flicker of relief in his eyes, a mixture of gratitude and disbelief that he had survived. Clara, still kneeling beside him, wrung out the hem of her shirt before pulling her damp hair back into a loose ponytail. Despite the chill creeping into her bones, she couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Saving someone's life wasn't something she'd ever imagined herself doing, but now that it had happened, she felt oddly proud. "You're really okay?" Clara asked again, tilting her head slightly to study him. Her voice carried a hint of concern, though her expression remained calm. She didn't want to overwhelm him with questions, but she needed to make sure he wasn't hurt or suffering from shock. Ethan nodded slowly, rubbing his hands together to warm them up. "I think so," he said, his voice steadier now. He glanced at the river, then back at Clara, shaking his head in amazement. "That current, I didn't think I'd make it out. If you hadn't been here." His words trailed off, but the meaning was clear. He owed her his life, plain and simple. Clara smiled softly, brushing off his gratitude with a small shrug. "Anyone would have done the same," she replied, even though she knew that wasn't entirely true. Not everyone would dive into a fast-moving river without thinking twice about their own safety. But to Clara, it wasn't bravery, it was instinct. Helping others came naturally to her, almost like breathing. Ethan studied her for a moment, taking in her modest demeanor. There was something special about this girl, he thought. She looked no older than 16, yet she carried herself with a maturity beyond her years. Her soaked clothes clung to her frame, but she didn't seem bothered by the discomfort. Instead, she focused on making sure he was all right, offering quiet reassurance and practical help. "Do you live around here?" Ethan asked after a pause, breaking the silence between them. He gestured vaguely toward the surrounding landscape, the rolling hills, the dense woods, and the shimmering river that had nearly claimed his life. Clara nodded, pointing upstream. "Yeah, just a little ways down. My family's farm is about a mile from here." She hesitated, then added, "I come to the river a lot. It's peaceful, usually." Ethan chuckled weakly at that, glancing at the water with newfound respect. "Peaceful, huh? Well, today it decided to throw me a curveball." His attempt at humor eased some of the tension, and Clara found herself smiling again. "You'll have to be more careful next time," she teased lightly. "This river can be tricky if you don't know it." "I'll keep that in mind," Ethan said, his tone turning serious. "Listen, I can't thank you enough for what you did. You saved my life and I owe you one. Is there anything I can do to repay you?" Clara shook her head immediately, waving away the idea. "No, really, it's fine. I'm just glad you're okay." She meant it too. The thought of accepting money or gifts for helping someone felt strange to her. In her world, kindness didn't come with strings attached. It was given freely, without expecting anything in return. But Ethan wasn't ready to let the matter drop. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small leather wallet, fumbling through it until he retrieved a business card. Handing it to Clara, he said firmly, "Take this, please. If you ever need anything at all, you call me, promise?" Clara hesitated, unsure how to respond. The card was plain, printed with neat black lettering, Ethan Calloway, and a phone number underneath. There were no fancy titles or logos, nothing to suggest that the man sitting before her was anything other than an ordinary traveler. Reluctantly, she accepted the card, tucking it into her pocket without giving it much thought. "All right," she agreed finally, standing up and brushing dirt off her jeans. "But only because you insist." Ethan managed a weak laugh, leaning heavily on his arms as he pushed himself to his feet. He wobbled slightly, still unsteady from the ordeal, but Clara stepped forward instinctively to steady him. "Careful," she warned gently, placing a hand on his arm. "You might want to sit for a bit longer." He shook his head, though his gratitude was evident in his smile. "I'll be fine. Just need to get back to my horse and figure out where I went wrong. Again, thank you, Clara. I won't forget this." With that, Ethan tipped his hat to her, a gesture both old-fashioned and sincere. Then, with slow but determined steps, he began walking along the riverbank, disappearing into the trees. Clara watched him go, her thoughts swirling like the eddies in the water behind her. Something about the encounter lingered in her mind, though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Maybe it was the intensity of the moment, the way the river had transformed from a place of peace to one of danger in an instant. Or maybe it was the look in Ethan's eyes when he thanked her, a mix of admiration and something else she couldn't quite name. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden light across the landscape, Clara retrieved her sketchbook from beneath the oak tree. It was soggy from being left behind during the rescue, but most of the pages were still intact. She flipped through them absently, her pencil marks smudged but recognizable. One drawing caught her eye, a rough outline of the river, its curves, flowing gracefully across the page. She traced the lines with her finger, remembering how beautiful it had looked earlier that day before everything changed. For a while, she sat there, letting the quiet settle around her once more. The river continued its endless journey downstream, oblivious to the drama it had caused. Clara felt a strange sense of connection to it now, as if it had revealed a secret only she could understand. Life, like the river, moved in unpredictable ways, sometimes calm, sometimes chaotic, but every twist and turn held meaning. Eventually, she stood up, slipping the sketchbook under her arm. The dampness of her clothes made her shiver, reminding her that it was time to head home. As she walked back toward the path leading to her family's farm, she reached into her pocket and pulled out the business card Ethan had given her. Turning it over in her hand, she examined it curiously. There was nothing remarkable about it, yet something about the simplicity intrigued her. Who was Ethan Calloway really? And why did he seem so insistent that she keep his contact information? Shaking her head, Clara tucked the card back into her pocket. Whatever the answers were, they would have to wait. For now, she had chores to finish and dinner to help prepare. The events of the day had been thrilling, but life in her small town always returned to its steady rhythm. Still, as she disappeared into the twilight, she couldn't shake the feeling that her meeting with Ethan was just the beginning of something bigger, something she couldn't yet imagine. The days that followed Ethan's rescue passed quietly for Clara, but the memory of their encounter lingered in her mind like a faint echo. She went about her usual routine, helping her parents with chores on the farm, tending to the chickens, and sketching whenever she found a spare moment. Yet, every now and then her thoughts would drift back to the riverbank. She'd replay the scene in her head, the frantic shouts, the icy water, and the way Ethan had looked at her with such gratitude. It was strange how one act could leave such a lasting impression. Despite her efforts to focus on daily life, curiosity began to gnaw at her. Who exactly was Ethan Calloway? He'd seemed so ordinary at first glance, a cowboy traveling through town unfamiliar with the area. But there was something about him that didn't quite fit the image. His confidence, his polished way of speaking, even the subtle elegance of his business card, it all hinted at more than met the eye. Clara wasn't one to dwell on mysteries, but this particular puzzle refused to let her go. One evening, after finishing her chores, Clara sat at the kitchen table flipping through an old magazine while her mother prepared dinner. The article on the page caught her attention, not because of its content, but because of the photo accompanying it. There, staring back at her from the glossy page, was Ethan. He stood beside a sleek black horse, wearing the same wide-brimmed hat and boots, She remembered, but this time he was dressed in a tailored jacket and surrounded by reporters. The headline read, "Ethan Calloway, the Cowboy Millionaire Transforming Rural America." Clara's heart skipped a beat. She stared at the picture, her mind racing as she processed what she was seeing. This couldn't be a coincidence. The man in the photo was unmistakably the same person she'd pulled from the river just days ago. Her hands trembled slightly as she scanned the article, her eyes widening with each sentence. According to the writer, Ethan wasn't just any cowboy. He was a self-made millionaire who had built an empire revitalizing struggling communities across the country. From sustainable ranching initiatives to eco-friendly tourism projects, he was known for his innovative ideas and generous philanthropy. People called him a visionary, a trailblazer, and someone who truly cared about making a difference. Clara felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her: shock, disbelief, and a touch of awe. How had she not realized who he was? And why hadn't he mentioned any of this when they met? Surely someone like Ethan wouldn't need rescuing, or if he did, wouldn't he have bodyguards or assistants nearby to handle emergencies? But no, he'd been alone that day, vulnerable and human, just like anyone else. That realization softened her initial surprise. Maybe fame and fortune didn't shield people from accidents or bad luck. Even millionaires could find themselves in over their heads, literally. As the night wore on, Clara couldn't stop thinking about what she'd learned. She retrieved the business card Ethan had given her and turned it over in her hands again. Now, it carried new weight. What had seemed like a simple gesture of gratitude suddenly felt monumental. Was Ethan expecting her to call him? Did he think she'd ask for money or favors? The idea made her uncomfortable. She didn't want anyone thinking she'd saved him out of selfish motives. Still, the possibility nagged at her. What if she did reach out? What if she told him about her dreams? Clara had always loved art. Since she was a child, she'd spent hours drawing and painting, losing herself in the world she created on paper. Her teachers often praised her talent, encouraging her to pursue it further. But opportunities were scarce in her small town, and her family's financial situation left little room for luxuries like art supplies, let alone college tuition. For years, Clara had resigned herself to the fact that art would remain a hobby rather than a career. She'd accepted it, but deep down, a part of her still longed for something more. The next morning, after much deliberation, Clara decided to take a chance. She picked up the phone and dialed the number on the business card, her fingers trembling slightly as she pressed each digit. When Ethan answered on the third ring, his voice was warm and familiar. "Hello," he said, sounding surprised but pleased to hear from her. "It's Clara," she replied quickly, her cheeks flushing despite the fact that he couldn't see her. "From the river." "Clara," Ethan exclaimed, his tone lighting up with recognition. "How are you? I've been meaning to check in with you, but I wasn't sure if you'd want me to bother you." "No, it's fine," Clara assured him, fiddling nervously with the edge of her sleeve. I actually wanted to talk to you about something." There was a pause on the other end of the line, but Ethan's voice remained encouraging. "Of course. Anything you need, just say the word." Taking a deep breath, Clara explained her situation. She told him about her passion for art, how much it meant to her, and how limited her opportunities were in their small town. She admitted that she'd seen the article about him and realized who he was, but she emphasized that she hadn't called expecting anything in return. "I just thought, maybe you'd understand what it's like to dream big when the odds feel stacked against you," she finished softly. To her relief, Ethan didn't laugh or dismiss her. Instead, he listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about her work and her goals. By the end of the conversation, he sounded genuinely excited. "Clara, I'd love to help," he said earnestly. "Why don't you come visit my ranch sometime? We can talk more about your art, and maybe I can show you some of the projects we're working on here." Clara hesitated, unsure whether to accept. Accepting his offer felt like stepping into unknown territory. Would he really take her seriously? Or was this just his way of repaying her kindness? In the end, however, her curiosity outweighed her doubts. "Okay," she agreed cautiously. "Thank you." I'd like that. Over the next few days, Clara prepared for the trip, packing a small bag with her sketchbook and a few of her favorite pieces. Her parents were skeptical at first, worried about sending their daughter off to meet a stranger, even one she'd saved from drowning. But Clara reassured them, explaining that Ethan seemed trustworthy and that this could be an incredible opportunity. Deep down, she hoped they were right to trust her instincts. When the day finally arrived, Clara boarded a bus heading toward Ethan's ranch, her stomach fluttering with nerves and anticipation. As the countryside rolled past her window, she wondered what awaited her at the end of the journey. Would Ethan live up to the larger-than-life persona she'd read about? Or would he be the same humble, grateful man she'd met by the river? What Clara didn't realize was that this visit would change everything, not just for her, but for the future she had only dared to dream of. The bus ride to Ethan's ranch felt like a journey into another world. Clara clutched her small bag tightly, her sketchbook tucked safely inside alongside a few of her favorite drawings. She stared out the window as the landscape shifted from familiar fields and hills to vast stretches of open land dotted with grazing cattle and towering windmills. The air seemed fresher here, carrying the faint scent of wild sage and earth. It was beautiful in a way that made her heart race, not just because of the scenery, but because she had no idea what awaited her at the end of this trip. When the bus finally pulled over near the entrance to Ethan's property, Clara stepped off cautiously, her boots crunching against the gravel road. A sleek black truck was parked nearby, its driver leaning casually against the hood. As she approached, the figure straightened up, tipping his hat with a warm smile. It was Ethan. He looked different today, clean-shaven, wearing pressed jeans and a crisp button-up shirt, but his eyes still held the same kindness she remembered from their first meeting. "Clara," he called out, waving her over. "Welcome to Calloway Ranch." She smiled back nervously, adjusting the strap of her bag on her shoulder. "Hi, Mr. Calloway," she said politely, unsure whether to shake his hand or simply nod. "Please call me Ethan," he replied, reaching out to take her bag for her. "Come on, I'll give you a tour." Ethan led her to the truck, opening the passenger door for her before climbing in himself. As they drove deeper into the ranch, Clara marveled at the sheer size of it. Rolling pastures stretched endlessly in every direction, interrupted only by clusters of trees and rustic barns. Horses grazed lazily in fenced paddocks, their coats gleaming in the sunlight. Workers moved about efficiently, tending to animals or driving tractors loaded with hay bales. Everything about the place exuded prosperity, yet there was an undeniable charm to it, a sense of authenticity that set it apart from the opulence Clara imagined when thinking of millionaires. "This is incredible," Clara murmured, gazing out the window in awe. "How big is it?" "About 5,000 acres, Ethan answered with a chuckle. "But don't let the numbers intimidate you. It's not just about the land, it's about the people who work it and the communities we support. That's what really matters." His words resonated with Clara. There was sincerity in his voice, a genuine pride in what he'd built, not just financially but socially. It was clear that Ethan cared deeply about more than just profit. He wanted to make a difference, and that impressed her even more than the sprawling estate itself. After showing her around the main areas of the ranch, including the stables where horses were trained and the greenhouses growing fresh produce, Ethan brought her to the centerpiece of the property, a stunning lodge-style home nestled against a backdrop of pine-covered hills. The house blended seamlessly with its surroundings, featuring large windows that framed breathtaking views of the landscape. Inside, the decor was elegant yet cozy, with wooden beams, stone fireplaces, and shelves lined with books and artwork. "This is my private gallery," Ethan explained as he guided her through a wide hallway. They entered a spacious room filled with paintings, sculptures, and photographs, all created by local artists. Some pieces depicted serene landscapes, while others captured the vibrancy of rural life. Each one told a story, and Clara found herself drawn to them immediately. "These are amazing," she whispered, stepping closer to examine a painting of a stormy sky over rolling plains. "Did you commission all of these?" "Not exactly," Ethan replied. "I collect works from talented individuals like yourself, people who have something unique to say through their art. I believe creativity has the power to inspire change, so I try to support it whenever I can. Clara felt a lump rise in her throat. She hadn't expected this level of encouragement from someone like Ethan. To him, art wasn't just decoration, it was a tool for connection and transformation. It reminded her why she loved drawing so much, the ability to express emotions and ideas that words alone couldn't capture. As they continued exploring, Ethan asked Clara to share some of her own work. Reluctantly, she pulled out her sketches, feeling self-conscious about presenting them alongside such polished pieces. But Ethan studied each drawing intently, his expression thoughtful and appreciative. "You have real talent, Clara," he said after a moment. "Your lines are bold, your composition striking. You see things differently, and that's rare. Have you ever considered pursuing art professionally?" Clara hesitated, unsure how to respond. "I've thought about it," she admitted. "But opportunities like that don't come easily where I'm from. And school costs money. A lot of it." Ethan nodded understandingly. "That's why I want to help. I'd like to fund your education at a top art school. Think of it as an investment in your future, and in the future of art itself." Clara's breath caught in her chest. For a moment she couldn't speak. The offer was overwhelming, almost too good to be true. I don't know what to say," she stammered finally. "Are you sure? I mean, you barely know me." "I know enough," Ethan said firmly. "You saved my life, Clara. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Besides, talent like yours deserves to be nurtured. Let me do this for you." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. She didn't want to cry, not in front of Ethan, but the weight of his generosity hit her all at once. This wasn't just about paying her back. It was about giving her a chance to chase her dreams without fear of failure. After a long pause, she nodded slowly. "Thank you," she whispered. "I won't let you down." Ethan smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I know you won't. Now let's talk about the next steps. There's a prestigious art academy in the city that would be perfect for you. We'll get you enrolled and I'll cover everything: tuition, supplies, housing. You focus on creating and leave the rest to me." For the remainder of the day, they discussed plans and possibilities, mapping out a path forward for Clara's education and career. Ethan introduced her to some of the staff at the ranch, explaining that they'd assist her with logistics if needed. By the time evening fell, Clara felt both exhilarated and overwhelmed. Her life had changed completely in the span of a single visit, and she knew there was no turning back now. As Ethan drove her back to the bus stop later that night, Clara gazed out the window at the stars beginning to twinkle in the darkening sky. She thought about how far she'd come since that fateful afternoon by the river, and how far she still had to go. One thing was certain: she owed Ethan more than just gratitude. She owed him a promise to use this opportunity wisely and pay it forward someday. And as the bus carried her home, Clara resolved to do just that. Years passed, and Clara's life transformed in ways she could never have imagined. The art school Ethan had sent her to was everything she dreamed of: a vibrant community of creative minds, each pushing boundaries and exploring new ideas. From the moment she stepped onto campus, Clara felt a sense of belonging she'd never experienced before. Her professors recognized her talent immediately, encouraging her to experiment with different mediums and techniques. She learned how to blend colors like never before, how to capture movement in still images, and how to tell stories through every stroke of her brush. But it wasn't just about technical skill. It was about finding her voice. In those early days, at school, Clara often thought back to her hometown, the quiet riverbank, the rolling hills, and the people who shaped her childhood. Those memories became the foundation of her work. Her paintings weren't just pretty pictures. They were windows into her soul, reflections of the beauty and struggles she'd witnessed growing up. Some pieces depicted serene landscapes bathed in golden sunlight, while others portrayed raw emotions: loneliness, resilience, hope. Each one carried a piece of her story, and viewers couldn't help but feel connected to them. Clara worked tirelessly, pouring her heart into every project. Late nights in the studio became second nature, as did skipping meals when inspiration struck. Her dedication paid off. By her third year, she began receiving recognition for her work, first in small student exhibitions, then in larger galleries around the city. Critics praised her ability to evoke emotion through simplicity, calling her style honest and unapologetically human. One gallery owner even offered her a solo show, which sold out within days. For the first time, Clara realized that her art wasn't just meaningful to her, it resonated with others too. Through it all, Ethan remained a constant presence in her life. He attended every exhibition, cheering her on from the sidelines without ever seeking attention himself. Occasionally, he'd invite her to visit his ranch again, where she'd meet other artists he supported or brainstorm ideas for new projects. Their relationship evolved into something deeper than gratitude. It became a partnership built on mutual respect and shared values. Ethan saw potential in Clara not just as an artist, but as someone who could inspire change, and he encouraged her to use her platform wisely. Inspired by Ethan's example, Clara decided to give back to the community that had shaped her. After graduating at the top of her class, she returned to her hometown. Not permanently, but often enough to make an impact. She partnered with local schools to teach art classes, showing children how creativity could be a powerful tool for self-expression. Many of these kids came from families struggling financially, much like hers had been, and Clara wanted them to know that their dreams mattered regardless of their circumstances. Her efforts didn't stop there. Together with Ethan, Clara launched a scholarship program aimed at supporting young creatives from rural areas. They called it The River's Legacy, named after the place where their journey began. The program provided funding for tuition, supplies, and mentorship opportunities, ensuring that talented individuals wouldn't be held back by financial barriers. Every year, dozens of students applied, and Clara took pride in reviewing their portfolios, seeing glimpses of herself in their passion and determination. As word spread about the river's legacy, Clara's reputation grew beyond the art world. She gave talks at conferences, sharing her story and urging others to invest in underrepresented voices. Her message was simple yet profound. Art has the power to heal, unite, and transform communities. It wasn't just about creating beautiful things. It was about fostering connection and understanding. Despite her success, Clara stayed grounded. She knew firsthand how easy it was to lose sight of what truly mattered amidst accolades and achievements. So, whenever she felt overwhelmed, she returned to the riverbank, sitting beneath the same old oak tree where she used to sketch. Sometimes she brought her paints, capturing the changing seasons in vivid detail. Other times she simply sat in silence, letting the gentle flow of water remind her of life's unpredictability. One crisp autumn afternoon, years after her rescue of Ethan, Clara found herself back at the river once more. This time, however, she wasn't alone. Ethan stood beside her, leaning on a walking stick as he gazed out at the water. Age had softened his features, adding lines to his face and silver to his hair, but his eyes still sparkled with the same warmth she remembered. "You've done incredible things, Clara," Ethan said quietly, breaking the peaceful silence. "I'm proud of you." Clara smiled, feeling a lump rise in her throat. "And I wouldn't have been able to do any of it without you," she replied softly. "You gave me a chance when no one else would." Ethan shook his head, waving away her gratitude. "No, Clara, you earned this. All I did was point you in the right direction. The rest was all you." They stood there together for a while longer, watching leaves drift lazily down the river. The scene was timeless, unchanged despite the years that had passed. To Clara, it felt symbolic, a reminder that while life might carry us forward in unexpected ways, certain moments remain etched in our hearts forever. Later that evening, as Clara prepared to leave, Ethan handed her a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note along with a photograph of the two of them taken during her first visit to the ranch. The note read, "To Clara, thank you for reminding me why I do what I do. Your courage that day saved my life, But your kindness afterward changed it. Keep shining your light, it's brighter than you know. With admiration, Ethan. Tears welled up in Clara's eyes as she read the words. She hugged Ethan tightly, promising to visit again soon. As she drove away, glancing back at the river one. Last time she realized that their story wasn't just about rescues or rewards. It was about connection. Two lives intertwined by fate, each leaving an indelible mark on the other. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly bring challenges, Clara faced it with confidence, knowing she wasn't alone. Years turned into decades, and Clara's journey continued to unfold in ways that inspired everyone around her. Her art evolved over time, shifting from the vibrant landscapes of her youth to more introspective pieces that explored themes of resilience, community, and interconnectedness. Each painting told a story, not just of her own life, but of the countless lives she had touched along the way. Galleries around the world clamored to showcase her work, and collectors eagerly sought out her pieces, knowing they carried not only aesthetic value, but also a deeper emotional resonance. But Clara never let fame or success distract her from what truly mattered, using her platform to uplift others. The scholarship program she and Ethan had founded, The River's Legacy, grew exponentially, becoming a beacon of hope for aspiring artists in rural communities. What started as a modest initiative with a handful of recipients soon expanded into a nationwide movement supported by donors, mentors, and volunteers who shared Clara's vision. Every year, hundreds of students received opportunities they might otherwise have never dreamed possible, all because one young girl had once dared to dive into a river to save a stranger. Clara often traveled to speak at events celebrating the program's impact. Standing before crowds of eager faces, she would recount her story, not to glorify herself, but to remind people of the power of kindness and determination. "Life is unpredictable," she would say, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "Sometimes we find ourselves in situations where we must choose between fear and action. I chose action that day by the river, and it led me here, to this room full of incredible individuals who are shaping the future through their creativity. Never underestimate the ripple effect of even the smallest act of courage." Her words resonated deeply with audiences, many of whom were beneficiaries of the river's legacy. One such recipient was a young man named Liam, whose paintings of urban decay and renewal caught Clara's eye during an exhibition. When she met him after the event, he tearfully thanked her for believing in him when no one else did. "Your scholarship didn't just pay for my education," he told her. "It gave me permission to dream bigger than I thought I could." Moments like these reminded Clara why she kept pushing forward, even when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming. As the years went on, Clara and Ethan maintained their close bond, though their roles shifted subtly. Ethan, now retired, spent most of his days on his ranch, tending to horses and mentoring young entrepreneurs interested in sustainable agriculture. He often joked that he owed Clara far more than she owed him, pointing out how her story had reignited his passion for giving back. "You saved me twice," he'd say with a twinkle in his eye, first from the river and then from complacency. Their friendship became legendary in the small town where it all began. Locals loved to share tales of the cowboy millionaire and the artist who changed each other's lives. Some claimed the river itself held magic, weaving destinies together, like threads in a tapestry. Others simply marveled at the idea that two strangers could form such a profound connection through an act of selflessness. One summer, Clara decided to host a special reunion at the riverbank, a gathering of past and present scholarship recipients, mentors, and supporters of the river's legacy. It was a celebration not only of the program's achievements but also of the spirit of collaboration that fueled it. Families set up picnic blankets beneath the sprawling oak tree, while children played tag along the water's edge. Artists displayed their work on easels scattered throughout the area, turning the riverside into an open-air gallery. Laughter and music filled the air, mingling with the gentle sound of flowing water. Ethan attended, of course, arriving in a vintage truck adorned with flowers placed there by well-wishers. As he walked slowly toward the gathering, leaning on his cane, the crowd erupted into applause. Clara rushed to greet him, wrapping her arms around him in a warm embrace. "You're the guest of honor today," she teased, guiding him to a seat near the front. During the ceremony, Clara delivered a heartfelt speech, thanking everyone who had contributed to the program's success. But she saved her final words for Ethan. Turning to face him, she said, "Ethan, you taught me that true wealth isn't measured in money. It's measured in the lives we touch and the legacies we leave behind. Because of you, I learned to see possibility where others saw obstacles. And because of you, the river's legacy exists to remind us all that no dream is too big if we stand together." Tears glistened in Ethan's eyes as the audience erupted into cheers. He stood slowly, raising a hand to quiet them before speaking. "Clara," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "you've given me far more than I ever gave you. You showed me that heroism isn't about grand gestures, it's about showing up when it matters most. That day by the river, you didn't hesitate to jump in. You didn't ask questions or weigh risks. You acted with pure heart. And that's something I'll carry with me forever." The evening concluded with a lantern release, symbolizing the light of hope carried forward by every participant in the river's legacy. As the glowing orbs drifted skyward, Clara stood beside Ethan, watching them disappear into the twilight. For a moment, neither spoke. They didn't need to. The beauty of the moment said everything. In the years that followed, Clara continued to create, teach, and inspire. Her legacy grew alongside Ethan's, intertwining like roots beneath the earth. Together they proved that acts of kindness, no matter how seemingly small, could spark extraordinary change. The river remained a constant presence in their lives, its waters flowing endlessly, carrying stories of courage, connection, and second chances. And so, as Clara sat once more beneath the old oak tree, sketchbook in hand, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a quiet afternoon interrupted by shouts for help to a global movement empowering generations of artists, her life had been shaped by choices made with compassion and purpose. The river had taught her many lessons, but perhaps the greatest was this: every ripple has the potential to become a wave, if we trust ourselves enough to take the leap.